All right. Welcome to yet another episode of the Real Shot 256 Evening Crypto. This is the Labor Day weekend edition coming to you on a holiday. Hope that you had a great weekend, better than mine at least. I actually did not have a very good weekend. Was filled with unprecedented, unexpected circumstances, but we're still breathing and we're 6 feet above ground. And that's what matters. So we're here once again, bringing you another episode. Again, hopefully you had a better weekend than I did, and you are feeling revitalized and ready to head into a new week if you're outside of the United States. If not, that you don't care about what I just said. It is another day like any other Monday. Today I do want to talk about the something that actually matters for the adoption of Bitcoin. Argentina has yet again gotten hit within regards to their currency, and as a response, the Argentinian government has actually slapped some pretty strict monetary rules for their citizens, and we'll talk about that. We'll get into that. We'll do a recap first, and then we'll talk about the news, and then we'll get into the charts with Bitcoin and try to figure out what the heck is going on and where are we heading after this. So currently trading at 264 billion market cap and 54 billion in the last 24 hours. Our Bitcoin dominance chart showing 70%. So we're back again above 70%, which, if you've been paying attention to this channel long enough, I've been telling you guys that this is definitely something that is going to continue on the uptrend. And, we do see here, again, Bitcoin ticking up in price. Yet again, another cycle, in my opinion, that some life was definitely sucked out of altcoins, and Bitcoin has been doing this for the majority of 2019. Ever since we hit bottom in December 2018, Bitcoin has actually been sucking the life out of a lot of these altcoins, and only the stronger ones have actually bounced back from that, but not really being able to stay afloat along with Bitcoin, or stay on par with what Bitcoin has been doing. Remember, every time Bitcoin dips, you see the altcoins dip harder, but then when you see a bounce, you see Bitcoin actually bouncing harder than pretty much anything else within the market cap, with the exception, of course, of a few players. But for the most part, this has been going on. This is an ongoing cycle, and I don't think it's going to stop. So again, be careful with where you put your money in this if you are trading or investing in cryptocurrencies. All right, so let's get into the news. Argentina imposes currency controls to its citizens, and we do see here this picture, meaning we want Macri is the current reigning president in Argentina. This calls for an exit, and also calling for an exit and a removal of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, which has offered, actually they've secured this bailout since actually a few years ago, since 2015, if this article is correct. And so because of their latest financial crisis here, Argentina has actually defaulted in payment of $101 billion in debt, which now the Standard & Poor's briefly classified as a default on Thursday. So their currency is being hit quite hardly again, losing another 25% of the value of their currency. So in response to that, Argentinian government has placed currency controls on its citizens, basically saying Argentinian citizens cannot buy foreign currency in excess of $10,000 per month. So that this is supposedly a safety measure, so the further continuation of the currency devaluation is somewhat mitigated. Now, in my opinion, the damage has been done. You've lost another 25% yet again, which brings it to about 50% loss in their currency value since 2018. 50% loss. Now, what the Argentinian government is trying to do here is to prevent the further debasing of its currency by, again, placing these currency controls, monetary controls, so the Argentinian currency stops bleeding basically into what we saw with Venezuela and Zimbabwe and all these other countries. They are trying to keep their native currency in their country and prevent people from actually buying things like the dollar or euro or something that will be more stable and help them hedge against this depressive action in their currency. The IMF still has another $57 billion to bail out the creditors in Argentina, not the citizens, the creditors. But given the recent actions by Argentina, the IMF has actually been kind of the IMF has actually kind of taken a step back and is reassessing on how they're going to move forward, because they've got an agreement with Argentina that they're pumping all this money into the banking community in Argentina, despite the horrible monetary policy and spending that the Argentinian government, along with the bankers in Argentina, have shown in the last since 2011. So now they're saying, we need to reassess and kind of, take a step back and see how we're going to approach this going forward, since Argentina has announced that they will be defaulting on $101 billion worth of debt by not making their last payment. So this is a big issue for any country going through this. Again, 50% devaluation of your currency is no joke, right? If you had $10,000 in the Argentinian peso, you're now down to $5,000, which isn't too bad. I mean, in comparison to places again like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, it's still pretty bad. It's still something that Argentina citizens are definitely not happy about, and not they're calling for the immediate exit of Macri and the IMF. So you can tell that these citizens are being harshly affected by this sort of situation. So why do I think this is important? Well, let's actually go to our, geez, what the heck just happened? I had a tweet ready to go for you guys, and now it looks like my screen refreshed. We're actually going to look for Mr. Pomp's Twitter account, because he just tweeted not that long ago, tweeted a very, very interesting chart, and now it's gone. Great. Let's see if we can pick it up on Google. So what happens when you don't prepare like you should. So local Bitcoin chart, Argentina. Get a double P there. So here we go. That's the chart. No, went somewhere else. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this chart here. Weekly local Bitcoin volume. And you see here, going back to August here, last month, actually this past summer has just been, a pretty phenomenal chart here as in regards to the adoption of Bitcoin in Argentina. Definitely showing us that, reflecting the response based on what has been going on with the Argentinian peso. People are starting to hedge somewhat. And I say this because I actually have some boots on the ground information, if you will. I have a friend that I've talked about here in this channel about in the past here. I do have a friend that lives in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he's been out there for over 10 years as a professor, living his routine life and enjoying things in Argentina and just overall enjoying his life in Argentina. And him and I got to talking about this whole issue about the debasement and depreciation of the Argentine peso, and he shared some very, very interesting information with me. I was actually trying to gather, what the overall sentiment and adoption is like in Argentina, and you really, gave me the boots on the ground, really, the type of information that you really want, because it's not coming from somebody who is a Bitcoin adopter or somebody who is trying to chill Bitcoin to his friends and family in Argentina. He's coming from a more balanced, from an outside looking in perspective, and he did let me know that Argentine citizens are actually still hedging with the dollar. They're hedging with other currencies, something that is going to be more stable versus or against the Argentine peso, not necessarily Bitcoin, right? He's, in his words, people are more worried about making their next mortgage payment, making their next, being able to pay their next electricity bill, than really putting money that they're hard, and this gives new meaning to hard-earned money. Argentinian citizens, for the most part, he's telling me, are more worried about making their bills on time than switching their currency over to something like Bitcoin. And again, this puts things into perspective. Now, there's two things going on here. There's that sort of view on the Bitcoin adoption issue, and there is also the real boots on the ground perspective on what is really going on over there. And so we do here have something that is telling us that the adoption of Bitcoin in Argentina is actually on the increase, on the uptrend. So now this could also be because, again, the currency controls that Argentina is putting in place for its citizens prevents people from, say, transferring over $10,000 worth of Argentinian pesos back and forth. So basically, they're trying to keep their peso in Argentina. So one way to circumvent that would be to use Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. And maybe it's 2019 and we have more adoption, we have more awareness within the cryptocurrency community, especially with Bitcoin. And maybe now some Argentine citizens are starting to see the value behind how and what Bitcoin can be used, and how it can really, change things for your personal situation and even your commercial situation, your business situation, where right now you can't move you can't move a lot of Argentine peso in and out of the economy without the bank putting a limit on it. So maybe this is the perfect storm type of scenario where now you can use these cryptocurrencies and there are no limits, even though it's a public ledger. There are no limits. There are no there's no way that the Argentine government can seize or prevent you from transacting in cryptocurrencies unless they put an outright ban. But there's still ways that you can get around that. As you see here, this is local Bitcoin chart. This is something that is done outside of any exchange or any digital platform where you'd have to maybe perhaps log in somewhere and enter your credentials, go through KYC, AML, any of those things, and basically you can get your hands on some Bitcoin and start transacting in it. So My hope is that that is really what's going on. That is the likelier scenario, that Argentine citizens are actually turning to Bitcoin for their future transactions, and a way to circumvent all these unfair regulations within the Argentine government. So let me know what you guys think. I do think that this is hugely important for Bitcoin and the adoption and the future going forward. Let me know what you guys think about that. If I'm missing the point, or if you guys have an idea, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, leave it down here in the comments. And again, try to keep your comments within the video. I know that some of you guys are reaching my content through your Facebook page, or maybe through your Twitter account, or however it may be. Please leave the comment here within the YouTube video so that we can keep the conversation in one place. All right, so let's actually take a look at the chart. Some people are saying that this sort of thing has been moving the price of Bitcoin. I don't think necessarily that it's true. I mean, there could be some truth to that, but I don't think that that's really what's going on. And so let's look at the chart, and because we actually have some editing to do. I like to keep my charts intact from video to video, so you guys are again can go back and fact check these things, or so that we stay on the same track. So we do have a little bit of editing to do. Let's actually get rid of some of these things so we have a little more clarity on this chart. Let's get rid of these guys right here, and let's get rid of these guys right here. Get a little bit more clarity. And now here's kind of what's been going on. And a lot of times these sort of things take a while for them to show up on the charts. All right, you got to make sure that this looks right. Okay. All right, there we go. I actually want to get, I kind of want to get rid of that, but not yet. All right, so here's where we're at. We've touched this bottom area of support now 3 times, and remember, this is the kind of thing that we definitely look for, right? To find the trend is once we've tested a certain point, whether it's resistance or support, at least 3 times, then you can definitely call something, right? So we've got 1 test, 2 tests, 3 tests now of this bottom area of support. So now we can definitely start to see that we're in a macro trend. The macro trend is telling us we're in this sort of a wedge, and now we can get rid of this bull flag looking thing here, this bottom area of support. And again, we can say that we're bouncing off of this area of support here, this rising trend of support down here. We touched it at around 9,400. In fact, let's get the official number there. So the low on that one was 95.28. Is that right? That seems like a bit high there. That is correct. Yeah, 93.20 is where we bottomed out. 93.20 according to Binance, right? So depending on where you trade, you might have a little bit slightly different price there, but we bottomed out there at the bottom of this rising trend line, and we've now had a pretty nice bounce. Now, if you remember last time I talked to you guys on Thursday, I told you guys we might grind all the way up to about 10,850 to 10,900. And actually, the bad news about that is, well, the short good news is we're actually, grinding upwards. However, if we didn't close any significant candles above 10,850 or 10,900, then this would actually turn into a bear flag, right? And then we'd see continuation to the downside. We've actually done what we needed to do to turn this thing around. And not only did we do that, we did open and close some major candles above the 10.9. We've also actually gone above this last pivot here. So we're currently trading right on top of it. I do want to see this hold if we want to see the continuation to this previous point of resistance here, major resistance, which is coming in at around 10,800. right? If we want to reach that point, okay? That's what I'm looking for. Hopefully this price here will hold at this level here. Really, if we break 10,250, that's when I start to worry. 10,250 is the next is in the shorter time, right? In the shorter time frame. If we do break 10,250, then look for continuation. We are going to run into this line of support here now. We're going to change the color so that you guys can identify it as support. This will be, an area of interest again at 98, actually 9,900. We should see a bounce there initially, and then we'll reassess from there. But right now, it's looking like it could have a slight pullback before continuing to 10,800 range. Yeah, I do think the move would finish there. Let's see if this works out. Let's put a measurement on this move here, top to bottom, right there. And let's drag this. I want to make sure that this lines up well. What is going on? Guys, sorry about that. Extended it slightly. There we go. Want to make sure I get this as accurate as possible for you guys. We do need to move this. Come on. Don't be so sensitive. All right, let's see. Are we lining up correctly? Yep, we are. Okay, so the measured move actually is pointing to this previous line of resistance here at 11.2. Interesting. Very interesting. Pointing at 11.2. Let's actually change the color so we kind of know that is the expected move, right? All right. So this is telling us that we should try at least 11.2. That's about $900 up above from where we currently are at. And we do have plenty of work to do. We do have to get we have to get past this 10,850 area before we can actually say, okay, this definitely does look like it. And here's a big kicker too. We have this huge descending resistance trend line here coming across, and this is telling us that we'd actually get above this resistance line. We'll see if that actually happens. I'm starting to be a little doubtful on this, but this is what the chart telling us right now. I'm a bit skeptical. I'll be honest. I'm a bit skeptical that we get to 11,250. But don't take my word for it. I certainly will be doing this. I have been holding on again. So now that the bounce is here, I will be de-risking once we get to about 10,850. And if we hit this, once we hit this area of resistance here, not waiting for the full move, once we hit about 11,100, that's another great point for you guys to start de-risking yourselves again. So if you entered a long down here at 94, 93, 9400, and you've been writing this up, this would be a good point to start, to exit, maybe at 11,100. Again, this just looks very, in my mind, with the volume of what we've seen in the last week or 2 weeks, I do see here, this as being something that will be greatly challenged. I mean, look at this previous pivot point. Did not get as far as to retest this area of support. We'd be making a higher high, and I just see that as a very unlikely scenario at this point. Can we come back and retest this? Absolutely. And this previous local high here is pointing at 10,930. Can we retest that? Absolutely. Absolutely we can. Can we get above it? That seems like unlikelier scenario. All right, so maybe write those things down on a piece of paper, on a stick-it, put it on top of your monitor when you're trading. These are the next areas of support: 10,850, 10,930 if we want to get past this previous high, and then we have 11,100 as the next area where we might be actually taking some risk off the table. All right, and then we've got a little bit more to go on this wedge, on this descending wedge, before we can actually say that, okay, we're ready to actually make a decisive move, whether it's to the upside or downside. Now, here's the cool part. Let's actually measure this guy here. If we were to break out of this thing, say, once we're actually full, we're still pointing for the previous, or we're still pointing at a new all-time high. And the last time I did a measurement on this, I told you guys we'd probably be looking at around 15,000, as you know, if it does break out of this formation in a bullish way, and that would be our next area of interest. Let's actually put a line up here, kind of as a reminder. We'll have to change that to red. All right, there we go. Now, if we do break down, let's also take a look at that. All right, so if we do break down, this thing is pointing at a move below the 0.236 on the Fibonacci extension tool, which to me just sounds like, I mean, everything would be, I mean, this would be the worst case scenario where we definitely have to switch our mind around and get bearish on Bitcoin. And again, we've seen some correlation with the traditional market. So if things don't continue to improve within the traditional markets, and maybe the trade talks and you know, the overall sentiment in the market, if things do not improve, and we're already seeing signs of a recession coming in the next year or two. So if things do not improve on that end, I do think that, you know, definitely Bitcoin is not going to going to escape unscathed. I do think Bitcoin will be in for some downward price action. Will it get to these points? Certainly. I mean, if things get really ugly, again, with the correlation, there isn't enough correlation sometimes with this market to be, you know, sort of worried or just be paying attention to it, because the potential is there, right? The potential that we do come back and retest these previous areas at 5,100 or 5,000, you know, is certainly not out of the picture if that is something that you know, we are going to see. So I know this is probably not something you want to hear, but it is something that I do want to definitely keep it on people's radar, really, because it is again, it's not something that anybody wants to see, especially if you're holding Bitcoin, or you believe in the fundamentals, you believe in this project, and you want Bitcoin to be adopted, and you know, we want international adoption as well, right? This is not something that you'd really be rooting for, or be sort of say looking forward to. Okay, but you know, again, we have to look at all of the possible scenarios. Again, this is the ultimate worst case scenario, where everything just breaks down, and you know, people panic sell to the tune of, I have to put a measurement move on this thing. Let's get a number on here, 45%, right? All right. Okay, so that is what we've got. Hopefully I gave you guys enough things to think about for the next day or two. This is what we've got going on. Let's look actually at the daily. And before we do that, I do want to bring up my moving averages and get rid of some trend lines here. Again, trying to keep it a little bit more simple. Let's look at the higher time frames. Let's look at the daily. All right. So daily looking pretty good, actually. We're right above the 55. We're finding support at the 55, which is great, guys. For what we just spoke about, or actually finding support at the 55 means that we're probably, it's looking less likely that we go back and retest 10,250. It doesn't mean that it can't. That it just means that we are definitely finding that support here. We should bounce off of it. It's telling us that it's coming right at 10,264.65, which is great. We should defend that area. Again, if we want to come back and retest these previous points over here at 10,850, the ultimate high over here was 10,944. Looks like, so it is definitely looking pretty bullish. I do want to again. The daily just opened up. This daily just opened up about 2 hours ago. So this is a brand new candle. I do want to see it. Now we've opened and hopefully we'll close above the 55. Even if we don't get above the simple 100 here at 10,589, I'm still, I remain bullish. I do think that we can get past this and again reach for 10,850 and quite possibly 10,950, right? So daily is looking pretty good. We also see the RSI actually ticking above the 21 EMA here on the RSI, which is a good sign. We definitely want to see continuation. And based on this, I do think, again, we're going to find support at the 55 and come back and retest. At least we're going to retest this 100 simple, and it does definitely look like it wants to do it. Now, again, we're in for a little bit of a retracement, but a quick bounce there. And again, 10,580 is kind of where we're looking at to retest the simple 100. Again, the RSI is letting us know that that is quite possible. All right, let's look at the weekly. Weekly is also looking pretty bullish. Is it a test of the 21 here? That's debatable. I do think there's a bit of a gap there, to be honest. I don't know if I want to actually commit to that, but I mean, it could be, right? It could definitely be a retest of the 21. In fact, yeah. I mean, it's very, very close to that. Very, very close. So now on the weekly, currently retesting the 30 simple here. We're below it, but we did find support above the 21. So we're trading within this range here. If this weekly does close above the 30, well, that would only mean one thing. We're probably going to go back and retest again. 10,960 looks like a very, very doable thing now. Okay, I'll leave it at that because I don't want to get too ahead of myself based on what's going on. And if we're also looking at, once we're here, we're also looking at the weekly, and also the weekly matching up with the wedge, right, or triangle if you want to call it that. Okay, that's on the weekly. Just definitely in confluence with that. The weekly though is flattening out here within the middle of the neutral area in the RSI. Again, if we do close above the 30, I do think we could quite possibly get a cross to the upside here on the RSI. Let's actually look at the monthly because we haven't looked at the monthly since our last video, since Thursday, and see where we ended. Oh, great! This looks great. Actually, let's look at Bitstamp. All right, so a little bit of flattening out here, which is great. I was actually afraid that we might, take or cross to down. We did cross to the downside. To be fair, it did that. However, we remained on top of the 21, and that is really the one thing I wanted to make sure that we didn't cross to the downside on the 21, and we actually bounced right on it. We're currently flattening out and we're staying right above it. So again, we here's the thing. Weekly, we have to keep closing some candles above the 21, and certainly if we get above the 30, then the monthly is going to be respected where it's at, and because if it does flatline and continues on this flat plateau here, then that is still a good thing. That is still a good thing. We're not going to get bearish on it yet. All right, but we do want to see continuation to the upside, and actually quite potentially, like we did actually reject off of the bullish control area here. Had we continued into this area here, I think we would have already set a probably a higher high for the year here at around 14,000. All right, so that is something to keep an eye on. Again, that is the more of the macro trend. Let's go back into the lower time frames. For the time being, 4 hour looks to be steadily within the bullish controls area here in the RSI. 3 hours looking the same. 2 hours probably going to look a little bit more tired. Yeah, it does. And the 1 hour as well. Yep. The 1 hour. Now the 21 is coming in right at the edge of the bullish control zone. So I do think we could get a bounce here. I do think that there's going to be plenty of support here. The algos and bots should pick this up. I hope. Again, don't trade based on what I'm saying, just based on price action and what you see in the charts. I do think initially, though, we are going to see a bounce off this 21, again coming in confluence with the bottom of the bullish control zone. So it is looking like that could be the case. And also on the hourly, here's something cool. We're sort of flagging downward here. This tiny little bear flag here. I sound like Bob Ross, I know. See this? So this is actually a bull flag. I'm sorry, I don't know if I think I said bear flag, but this is actually a bull flag in the micro trend sort of thing. Right, so this one would be pointing at 10.5, which coincides with this local top over here, using bodies, right? Using bodies. So would coincide with this. This looks like quite possibly something we could see here in the next day or two. All right. So again, hopefully I've given you some points of interest, some things to keep an eye on for the next day or two. We just ticked green again on Bitcoin. So yeah, things are looking pretty good. Things are looking pretty bullish. Again, these are some areas of interest, and let me know what you guys think. If you are finding this information useful, definitely hit the like button and also hit the subscribe button, and do let your friends know about the channel. I will keep this one short since the altcoins are just kind of bouncing again along with Bitcoin. Not really a whole lot to do or say in that. And again, for the sake of keeping it short for you guys, definitely let me know down in the comments if you'd like me to cover anything else, any other altcoin or whatever you might want me to cover. But other than that, that's all I got. Leave it down in the comments. Let's chat it up, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Again, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.